the art of combined arms, maneuver warfare. I was privileged to serve there twice, the last time as its commander. At the center, we made sure that, in true Patton style, the Army sought to teach better fighting techniques and develop the requirements for better equipment. The result was an Army that was trained, transformed, and ready for a fight. With the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, some of the restraints on the use of U.S. forces were released. Patton would have been proud of the Army's sweeping maneuver to push Saddam Hussein's legions out of Kuwait. He would have positively rejoiced as American armor, including a brigade from his own 2nd Armored Division, knocked out enemy vehicles from ranges of up to 2 miles with precision tank gunnery, or defeated a large defending force at night in one of the largest tank battles in military history. And certainly, Patton's spirit was there with Army Generals Dave McKiernan, the Land Force Commander, and Scott Wallace, commanding 5th Corps, as they sped deep into Iraq to penetrate Saddam's forces and seize Baghdad in the spring of 2003. Maneuver warfare, risk-taking, it was all there, and Patton would have been proud to acknowledge his legacy. Technology is far advanced now, of course. Unmanned aircraft fly over the enemy and send pictures to the ground. Tanks communicate by internet-like messages. And with infrared technology, we own the night. But Patton would see all this as the natural evolution of warfare along his own design. It would be a mistake to limit Patton's influence to a form of warfare. In fact, it is also his character that has exerted a magnetic pull on the officer corps. His tone-deafness to politics, his aggressive swagger, his fight where we're told, win where we fight attitude, marked a line of professional ethics that many officers have followed. He was the consummate professional warrior, committed to learning his profession, the master of the sword. Despite his swagger, Patton had a large dose of self-doubt. But only fools are always certain in leadership and war, 2 of mankind's most unpredictable activities. Patton's willingness to admit his doubts to himself may have been a key factor in his continuing professional growth, for as you will read in the following pages, Patton was able to look over the edge of the cliff and work to avoid the failures foreseen. Many of my mentors at West Point and later would work hard to produce a Patton Plus mentality, hard-charging in combat, yes, but also able to deal with the intricacies of strategy and statecraft. In view of the challenges we face in peacekeeping operations today, we've never needed the Patton Plus mindset more. Patton was a master of the media, at least most of the time, as you will read in Alan Axelrod's book. For all his appreciation of and use of the media, however, he also discovered that it was truly a double-edged sword. The publicity that could make a career could also finish it. No doubt, Patton would have his frustrations with the global war on terror, nation-building, and peacekeeping. In the pages that follow, Axelrod describes Patton's difficulties in post-war Germany, difficulties that are reflected in our current peacekeeping missions. But Patton was a student, perpetually studying how best to accomplish each mission. And it is this mindset, more than any other, that Patton has to offer today's leaders. He was a winner, a morale and team builder who adapted quickly and sought to master every challenge. We need leaders like that today. General Wesley K. Clark. Introduction. Command and Controversy. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt was the brilliant German commander of World War II whose daring and desperate Ardennes offensive, the Bulge, was pounded into disaster by George S. Patton's Third Army. Asked after the war to name the American commander who most impressed him, Rundstedt did not hesitate. Patton was your best. In a stunningly candid appraisal, Marshal Joseph Stalin declared, "The Red Army could not have conceived, and certainly could not have executed, the advance made by the Third Army across France." Americans also offered praise. Patton's subordinate, Lucian Truscott, a hard-bitten old cavalry commander who clashed bitterly with his chief during operations in Sicily, called him perhaps the most colorful, as he was certainly the most outstanding battle leader of World War II. As for ordinary GIs, many certainly did not love the general. Patton's partially self-invented nickname, Old Blood and Guts, was ubiquitous during much of the war, and many a GI griped, with sarcasm typical of the American Army, "Yeah, his guts, our blood." Yet, probably to a man, the soldiers of the Third United States Army took very hard and very personally Patton's death on December 21st, 1945. As one private wrote to his parents, all the boys in his outfit were in mourning for one of the greatest men that ever lived. The rest of the world thinks of him as just another guy with stars on his shoulders. The men that served under him know him as a soldier's leader. I am proud to say that I have served under him in the Third Army. Some other Americans had very different feelings. The critic and cultural historian Dwight MacDonald, who served in World War II, called Patton a swaggering big mouth, a fascist-minded aristocrat, brutal and hysterical, coarse and affected, violent and empty. Compared to the dreary run of us, General Patton was quite mad. Andy Rooney, a young war correspondent who today is best known as the curmudgeonly commentator on CBS television's 60 Minutes, minced no words. He detested Patton and everything about the way he was. It was because we had so few soldiers like him that we won the war. Patton was the kind of officer that our wartime enlisted man was smarter than. It is easy to find scores of paeans to George S. Patton, Jr., and just as easy to find at least as many indictments lodged against him. What cannot be found is anything in between. No one seems to have had a moderate, let alone objective, opinion of the general. Why did Patton so powerfully polarize opinion, and, indeed, why does he continue to do so? Historians, armchair generals, and professional soldiers routinely dissect and debate the campaigns of Napoleon, Grant, and Lee, apportioning praise or blame, merit or criticism, based on tactics and troop movements. This is not the case with Patton. No one disputes the results he achieved. Patton was a highly effective pioneer, advocate, and exponent of modern mechanized warfare, as well as a doctrine of highly mobile offensive, which enabled American ground forces to prevail against the army that invented blitzkrieg. On the eve of American entry into World War II, in the largest, most ambitious war games the U.S. Army had ever staged, Patton was universally acknowledged to have outgeneraled all of his colleagues. Subsequently assigned to create a desert warfare training center outside of Indio, California, Patton turned out America's first generation of desert warriors. When the U.S. Second Corps, in the Army's first major contest against the Germans, suffered humiliating defeat at Kasserine Pass, Tunisia, Dwight D. Eisenhower, commanding the U.S. Army in North Africa, called for Patton. Within days, he transformed the thoroughly demoralized American force into the kernel of a victorious army that defeated the vaunted Africa Corps. When Anglo-American forces jumped off from North Africa to invade Sicily, Patton unilaterally revised the subordinate role his Seventh Army had been assigned and, with lightning speed, took Palermo and then beat British General Bernard Law Montgomery to the conquest of Messina. Following the D-Day landings at Normandy, Patton was assigned command of the Third Army, and, with it, amplified Operation Cobra, General Omar Bradley's modest plan for breaking out of the Norman hedgerow country. into the most spectacular and productive advance of World War II.